Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a what's for dinner video with some cheap meal ideas when you just need a little help deciding what to make for dinner. And I just have some really easy, really delicious recipes that my family loves, and I hope you will enjoy as well. First up, we have this really easy beef stroganoff, and I've made a version of this in the Instant Pot before, but I also make it on the stovetop sometimes when I just don't feel like getting my Instant Pot out. But I'm just seasoning a pound of ground beef with some seasoned salt, garlic powder, and onion powder, and you can add whatever spices you and your family likes. I've even done it with some steak seasoning before, and it turns out pretty good. But you're just going to brown the ground beef until there's no more pink in the center. And I mean, I guess it doesn't technically have to be cooked through because you are going to be boiling it, but I really like the flavor whenever I cook it all the way through and it kind of fries a little bit. Then I'm going to remove a little bit of the excess grease. You do want to leave a little bit because you will be making a roux, and you do need some of that fat for the flour to absorb and cook down. Then I added a 1/4 cup of flour, and I'm just going to cook that until it's all like warmed through or whatever. You're really just cooking the flour taste out. Then I'm going to add about 3 cups of beef broth. I'm using water and beef bouillon, but you can use beef broth or whatever broth you have on hand, and a can of cream of mushroom soup. I will have this and all the recipes that I've used linked in the description box below, so if you like any of them, you can definitely check that out and print them off or keep them for yourself or whatever. Now I'm just stirring everything, making sure that soup is kind of broken up. It did stay a little bit clumpy, so I did go in with a whisk and just whisk it up. I also added some Worcestershire sauce, as you can see, but I'm just breaking up the soup pieces because you don't want it chunky. And then I'm going to add in an entire bag of egg noodles. The recipe calls for, I think, 3 cups, and the entire bag ends up being about 5 cups, I think. And so I did end up adding a little bit extra liquid because there wasn't enough liquid in the pot already. And now I'm adding a container of Greek yogurt. It calls for a cup of sour cream. My family doesn't really like sour cream, but we don't mind the Greek yogurt. And this is how it turns out. It's super delicious, super hearty and comforting, and my entire family loves it. It's my 6-year-old's favorite. Up next, we have some chicken tenderloins with some Brussels sprouts, corn, and some homemade rolls. And I'm going to start off by showing you how I made the rolls. These are like 30-minute rolls, I think is what they're called. But you just start by adding your warm water, sugar, and yeast to your stand mixer, or you can do it in a regular bowl. And then you're going to let the yeast proof. It should end up looking nice and bubbly. And then you're going to go ahead and add all your other ingredients. It's salt, some olive oil, and then some flour. I never really go exactly by the directions of the flour because sometimes it's more humid and you need less flour. Sometimes the air is drier and you need more flour. So I just kind of add about 1/2 cup at a time until it comes together and forms the dough that it needs to form. At this point, it was getting a little thick, so I switched out my paddle attachment for my dough hook. I don't enjoy using the dough hook to mix the entire dough. Some people do. I just find it comes together a lot faster when I use the paddle attachment. And this is sped up. My mixer was only on about 3 or 4. It wasn't going that fast. But every so often you do want to scrape down the sides just to make sure that everything comes together well and everything mixes and incorporates really nicely. Everything is mixed together. Again, I'll have the recipe link below, but you're just going to oil your hands and pinch some off about the size that you want your rolls to be, and you're just going to roll them together into balls and sit them on your baking dish. I'm using a 9x13 casserole dish, but you can use a baking sheet or cast iron or however you want to make them. And then you're going to set your oven to 425 and let the rolls rise while the oven is preheating. And while that's going, I'm going to slice up my Brussels sprouts. I'm using a mandolin. It's just easier. We like the consistency and texture that this make some. I don't like them too big, and using a knife kind of takes too long. But this is how the rolls turned out after they'd risen just a little bit. There's not a huge difference, but they definitely puffed up a little bit. Then I'm going to add my Brussels sprouts to a hot pan with some olive oil in it, and add a little bit more olive oil on top because you don't want them to be dry. And then you can season them with whatever you like. We really like the seasoned salt, and sometimes I add garlic powder, onion powder. I mean, just however you want it to taste is how you can season it. Stir all that together, put a lid on it, and really just let it go. The lid helps lock in the moisture and hold the steam in, and really keeps them from drying out. If you leave the lid off, they'll just be drier and not quite as good in my opinion. Up next for the chicken, I'm just going to add a little bit of olive oil to a pan, and I've seasoned them on both sides with some seasoned salt, onion powder, garlic powder. You can again use any seasoning that you want. Some blackened seasoning would be really good. Some Cajun seasoning is really good. Just however you and your family like them to taste. But I'm just going to leave them on the skillet until they release. If you try to flip them too early, they're going to stick. So wait until they kind of draw up a little bit and start to get a little bit of color. I did not wait long enough, so there wasn't as much color as I wanted to, but they did release really easy, and this one has a little bit better color. I think my heat is a little uneven in this pan, so I'm going to switch them around a little bit, but you're just going to let them cook until they have a nice color on both sides. When you flip them, you want to cook them until they're done in the middle. At this point, everything's pretty easy. You're just stirring and watching and making sure nothing's burning, but it's cooking nice and evenly. I had some corn go into, and I was just going back and forth between everything, making sure everything looked okay. About 20 minutes, the rolls were ready, and this is what they looked like. This was my first time ever making dinner rolls, and they aren't the prettiest, but they tasted delicious. And I just topped them all with some butter while they were hot so it could kind of melt in. This is the final product. Super yummy, fairly easy, and really delicious. And finally, we have this meatball rice and gravy with some corn and potatoes. And I'm using about 2 pounds of venison. You can use ground beef, you can use beef and sausage, whatever your family likes. Since venison is so lean, I did add a little bit of olive oil. Then I'm going to throw in, I ended up using the entire package of ranch. Right there, I only used half. But it calls for a pack of onion soup mix. I didn't have that, so I just threw in some beef bouillon and plenty of onion powder. And a half a cup of Ritz crackers crushed up. You can use breadcrumbs, half a cup of milk, and an egg. And I'm just going to mix everything until it's combined. With ground meat, you definitely don't want to overwork it, but you want everything to be mixed thoroughly and just make sure it's all incorporated. At this point, it didn't look seasoned quite well enough, so I added the rest of that ranch, and then about a 1/4 cup more of the crushed Ritz. Again, you can use breadcrumbs if you want. Then I'm just going to mix all the rest of that together. Once it's got all mixed up, you're going to start forming your meatballs, and you just take however big you want them to be, and just roll them up into balls. You can make them bigger, you can make them smaller. It's however you and your family like to eat them. Once they're all rolled up into your balls, you're just going to throw them in the oven, and then I'm going to get started on the roux. You just want equal parts flour and oil. I like my roux a little bit on the wetter side, so I tend to add a little bit more oil. This wasn't enough oil, so I did add more. You can use any kind of oil that you like, a neutral cooking oil. I'm using olive oil, but a lot of people use vegetable oil or canola oil, just whatever you like. And the key to a roux is you have to keep stirring. You cannot let it stop, and it does take about 20 minutes or so. and you just have to keep constantly stirring. You want to get to about chocolate syrup consistency, but I was running out of time, and so I did finish my roux a little bit earlier, but it still tastes delicious. Just the longer you cook it, the deeper the flavor is going to be, and it gives it this really nice toasted nutty kind of flavor almost, but it's so good, worth the effort. And I'm going to slowly start adding in my water for the gravy, and you don't want to mix it all in too fast because it will get clumpy. Just add about half a cup to a cup at a time and keep stirring. Again, that's the name of the game, is you have to stir. If you would like a detailed video on how to make a roux, I can definitely make one. It's a longer process and it's fairly straightforward and easy, but it does take some time to learn what you're doing. And at this point, I have 2 packets of brown gravy mix and a pack of onion soup mix mixed in the water, and I'm stirring that in to the 2 cups that I already added. And this is what's going to flavor all your gravy, make it really delicious, and thicken it just a little bit more. The flour is going to thicken it some, but the gravy packs will add extra flavor and thicken it a little more. After my meatballs had cooked for about 30 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and transfer those over into the gravy and let those simmer together. You do not want your liquid to boil because your meatballs will fall apart. I've learned that the hard way, but you definitely don't want it on like super low. I put my stove at like 2, sometimes 3. Then I just cover it and let it go. The longer it cooks, the better it'll be. And I'm going to get started on some roasted carrots. I literally just put some baby carrots with some olive oil in a ranch packet, and that's it. But these are delicious. My family loves them this way. I love them this way, and they're super easy. I roasted the carrots on 425 for about 20 minutes and they turned out perfect. If you like them more done, you can let them go longer. It's just all your preference. And then I served the meatball and gravy over rice and leftover rolls, leftover corn, and then those carrots, and it was so yummy. This was probably my favorite meal of the week. But if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. Please give this video a thumbs up if you like videos like this, and I'll see you in my next one. Thanks. Bye.